My Supreme Court project is on the Dred Scott versus Sanford case, which was argued in 1856 but declared in 1857. This controversial issue began in 1850 when the state court declared Dred Scott a free slave. But once his second owner remarried, she had then left the Scott's family to her brother, John Sanford, who then refused the family's wages. And John Sanford upholding the Scots' wages, their case got upheld. And sooner than later, the Supreme Court was overturned to the Scots' case.
In the original court trial of Dred Scott versus Sanford, the Supreme Court argued in 1856 but decided in 1857. This case was built around the fact that blacks were not considered as citizens. The Supreme Court ruled that Americans of African descent, whether free or slave, were not American citizens and could not sue in court. Also, they argued that Congress lacked the power to ban slavery in U.S. territories.
From the Supreme Court trial, Dred Scott versus Sanford, the courts argued that Scott's status as a citizen of a free state did not necessarily give him the status of a U.S. citizen, which I feel to believe is atrocious because under the Missouri Compromise of 1820, it states that certain western northern states were banned of slavery. So why doesn't the rights of becoming a U.S. citizen pertain to Dred Scott? So I intend to prove whether slave or free slave, any African American citizens deserve the right to be classified as a U.S. citizen. Dred Scott deserves to be seen as a U.S. citizen because during the hard labor for the Sanford family, he had managed to save his wages for many years to buy his family's freedom, but in the end, he was refused by John Sanford. And this fact explaining just one of the many examples of African American slaves being misused and overworked as if they were property for little or less reward. And so this is the reason why I feel that my opponent is wrong. Another proven stance will be, way before the Constitution came into existence, the states were able to create their own citizenship criteria of their very own free state. So I ask again, why aren't African American citizens classified as U.S. citizens? All African American citizens should be considered as U.S. citizens. Most slave owners and court officials want African American slaves to work for food, money, and property, like any other regular citizen, but cannot easily classify them as a regular U.S. citizen. These people are not living for their own survival. They're living for the next person's / dictator's rights of life, liberty, and property. So I believe the court should decide in favor of Dred Scott and many of the other African American descendant people. The final outcome of the Supreme Court decision was declared in favor of Sanford. This was because the court said Sanford had constitutional rights by the Fifth Amendment, which states no man should be deprived of life, liberty, or property. And since back then black people were considered as property, the courts ruled in favor of Sanford. This decision caused society of the western side to be outraged at the southern slaveholders, and then greatly influenced the nomination of Abraham Lincoln.